Oh, hello. You've interrupted me in reading the works of Kipling. Today we're going to talk about coffee and guitars. Hey buddy, how's it going? So, today's guitar we're talking about is the Gretsch G6118T-135. It's their 135th anniversary model in Casino Gold and Dark Cherry Metallic. Really nice. It's got a pair of these high sensitivity Filtertrons on it, a Bigsby 6, a B6 with the chevron cut out in it. Very nice guitar. Ebony fingerboard, rosewood or ebony rocking bar bridge. It's a little bit interesting because on the rocking bar bridge, it's machined with two elliptical slots. For Gretsch usually pins, these days they tend to pin a lot of their bridges, their floating bridges. So they're floating, but they tend to stay in place regardless. But this actually has two elliptical slots in it so that you can move it. That's my dog chewing on his bone, don't worry about it. So you can move it to intonate properly, which I've kind of done. The G string still sounds like a G. I hate the G and B strings on the guitar, but I mean, it wouldn't be a guitar without them, so what are you gonna do? Playing through the Vox AC15 and drinking this coffee from Rwanda, from an estate that I can't pronounce, with caramel sweetness, tastes of toasted almonds, medium acidity, and medium body. It's actually really good. Doing it pour over style today, which once upon a time, pour over was not like this fancy hipster bullshit that it is now. We used to drink it. It was actually, I think, called single serve or single pour. A lot of places on the Oregon coast served it, but now it's super hipster and people get it with fancy brass contraptions that hold filters and talk about it while reading poetry and things like that. Regardless, it's a good way to actually have a nice clean cup of coffee. I'm doing basically just some minimalist guitar playing and enjoying this guitar's nice Filtertrons. Filtertrons are Gretsch humbuckers, kind of. Well, I mean, they literally are Gretsch humbuckers, but they're not quite like Gibson humbuckers. They have their own sound going on. It's a little bit different, a little kind of crunchy on the top end. The bottom end is pretty clear to my ear. But still tends to come through with a lot of the higher harmonics than Gibson humbuckers do. Gibson humbuckers. Yeah, they really help to give you that great Gretsch sound. I think there's a trademark symbol after that. Yeah, the Gretsch story is very long and very interesting and very detailed, and you should probably read it or listen to somebody talk about it, and I don't remember everything, so I'm just not going to do that. I'll just talk about this guitar. I bought this guitar while I was drunk, which is kind of a interesting side note. Anyhow, so I have this guitar, and it's a very fun guitar to play, very stable. It's probably the most tuning stable Bigsby equipped guitar I own, which isn't difficult because I own two and the other one is not very tuning stable. But it's just a ton of fun to play. And it's a ton of fun to plug directly into the amp. I'm going almost directly into the amp right now. I have the secret preamp engaged from Chase Tone, which is a recreation of the Echoplex preamp using period correct parts, and it sounds really nice and gives you a choice of 3 different 70s EQ curves. And it just sounds kind of... Actually, you know what? Do a little engage, disengage, and A/B test here. This is with it turned on the bright EQ setting. Turned off. So, it livens up the sound a lot, actually. It gives you a lot of extra harmonics and just kind of... it does push the tubes, but there's some sort of black magic, wizardry, and witchcraft involved in that whole thing. It just really makes amps sound better. It's really opened up... Hey, buddy! Really opened up the sound of my Supro a lot, and it really gives this Vox that sort of bright, crunchy glass top tone that Voxes have when they're pushed. It's just fantastic. So, a couple of things. The Gretsch Vox combo is a really, really classic combo. And you might think that because Filtertrons really tend to accentuate the high end a little bit, and Voxes really tend to describe and accentuate the high end, that it makes a bad combination. But it's actually really similar to the Dallas Treble Booster, Dallas Rangemaster Treble Booster. I feel like there are too many words in there. It's really similar to how a treble booster works on an amplifier. At a certain point, once you saturate a frequency, it actually does really magical, interesting things with the tubes and makes them get sparkly and funky and just sound really fun, musical. I imagine there's a lot of science to it, where there's like a thing, and then you put more thing, and then there's more thing. So basically what you're doing when you put a lot of treble into something that already has some treble, and then it overdrives the treble, you're like thing plus thing, more thing, but not too much thing, just thing. It's basically science. The Gretsch Country Gentleman, which was the Chet Atkins signature guitar, was actually kind of partially responsible, maybe not responsible, used by George Harrison when he first sort of got catapulted to stardom. There's a wonderful story about how he went and bought a blah blah guitar, and then went and played on the TV, and then things, and then the Beatles. Anyhow, it's actually, this is not that. As I already said, this is 6118. That's a 6120. Gretsch has an interesting numbering convention. The Country Gentleman is a hollow body like this, but it has painted on F-holes and a bunch of interesting things beyond this, with different controls that were the way that Chet Atkins liked them. I'm actually a bigger fan of this. This has a fairly normal control setup with pickup selector, master volume, master tone, individual pickup volumes. That's the only part that's a little bit different from Fender or Gibson guitars. And of course it has the Bigsby, as I already mentioned, and a rocking bar bridge, which means this is a bar, and when I go like this, it rocks, thus rocking bar. Pretty imaginative name. Other things, it has neoclassical thumbnail inlays. I don't know why, but I like them. They're pretty cool. Locking tuners. Other things that are different from most Gretsch. Oh, my other Gretsch isn't here. For most Gretches, they have these interesting little barrel pin things, bolts, nuts, little knurled nuts that go on bolts right here, and they actually serve as a kind of strap lock, whereas this one came with Schaller strap locks. Grover strap locks. I lied. I don't know why, but I mean, I don't have a problem with them. A lot of people have problems with strap locks. I don't really have a problem with strap locks. I have had a lot of guitars. No, I've had one guitar drop on me many times when gigging, but that guitar was a piece of shit, so it was fine, and I'd just pick it up and keep playing. It just made a lot of noise when I dropped it. I really enjoy this guitar because it's so tuning stable and it has a Bigsby. Bigsbys are this wonderful, subtle vibrato tremolo sound. You can employ a little more pull and a little more push to do a little bit of that Chris Isaacs thing. I'm murdering that, but that's kind of how you do that riff, but better. So I really enjoy Bigsby's because of the subtlety and gracefulness of it. I get that Strat tremolos and Floyd Roses and Wilkinson trems and stuff like that are capable of much more extreme things, but I kind of enjoy just the antiquarian steampunkness of having this giant thing bolted to the back of a guitar. Plus it looks beautiful. They're a little bit temperamental, but yeah. Also you don't want to try and do too much of a pull because the spring can jump out of the pocket. As I mentioned, it is Casino Gold, which is kind of a very subtle metallic gold with metallic dark cherry, which I don't know if you can see that, but it's just a really nice color. Gretsch has been making anniversary models for a long time, ever since they started having anniversaries. It's always been, it's up in the 6000 series, so it's a better made guitar than the 5000 series, mostly. There are exceptions to this. But they do a couple of things differently. They don't bind the neck, which from a certain perspective can be good. And they'll often use like just a touch lower spec components or do things a little bit differently, like have this or the elliptical pin bridge. I happen to really like this guitar because, well, I actually like all of my guitars. If I didn't like them, I wouldn't have them. And that's really about it. You can add a lot of other people into the mix and you can be really good as a band, but if you can make yourself be outstanding as a musician and a singer-songwriter, when you add in other people, they're just that special sauce. I don't really have anything else to add to that because that's actually a really good thing to say. There's a bunch of coffee grounds left at the bottom of my mug, but it's still pretty good. I think I probably messed up the pour over a little bit. I was actually going to do a video about stereo using different amps so that you can avoid phase cancellation issues, and I decided not to do that because amps are heavy. Yeah, I know, you're sneezing. Amps are heavy, and carrying them around is actually a lot of work, and carrying two of them is harder, actually twice as hard as carrying one. That's math. Yep. I do get the caramely sweetness, and I guess I can taste the toasted almonds. It's definitely medium acidity. I don't quite get body in coffee. I understand body in beer and body in spirits, and I understand body in a lot of other things, but I don't quite understand body in coffee because it doesn't have anything to do with the amount of dextrins and unfermented starches left over in the mash like it would with beer. So I don't know. Not really sure, but I've kind of got a theme going on. It's minimalism. This is black coffee. It's rather delicious by itself. You could add more things into the mix, and that would add more complexity and make things a little more interesting. But at the same time, it's very good by itself. Well, it's Sunday, so it's kind of difficult to actually get up a lot of energy and gusto for this sort of thing, but I'll give it a try. If you like the video, give it a like and subscribe.